You know what really pisses me off?
What?
ICE. Just everything related to ICE right now.
Yeah, I can understand that.
It's like they're racially profiling. They're not giving anyone due process. They're literally tearing families apart. They're doing things like I've gotten to the point where I can't even read entire articles because I'm so pissed off about the state of how immigrants are being treated in this country that sometimes I just get through the headline and I'm like, that's enough. That's enough. Shut it down. I can't. I have to separate myself. I need to give myself a break. So like I just saw something yesterday that was like an immigrant committed a crime. He served his time, released from prison, committed no other crime, sent to Africa. Do you know where he's from? Not an African country. He was literally deported to a country he's not from. And he was just a black immigrant. And they were like, send him to Africa because we're super fucking racist in this country.
Well, thank you for that lovely intro. Welcome to the next episode of Unapologetically First Gen. In this episode, we are tackling ICE. I'm Stacy, the younger sister.
I'm Lesley, the one who's super angry, apparently.
Super angry.
I think everybody who's paying attention is super angry. I don't know, man. I have days where like it's a little more under control than it currently is. And it's just this morning, it's not.
Fair enough. All right, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it.
I think one of the most interesting things is we started talking about doing this episode a day or two ago, and I was like, oh, let's just see what's in the news right now. We will have so much to talk about. And I actually took notes when we were talking about it. I just Googled ICE again today, and it's just like a whole new slew of headlines, and it's super interesting. It's just so much is happening so fast, and that's what's so crazy. I feel like I don't even have time to catch up to what's going on because just so many people are being detained and ICE's budget is being expanded and everything that you said, families are being separated, all of this stuff.
Yeah, there's just such a huge slew of negative emotions. So there are things that you see and that you hear that are absolutely heartbreaking. Like this actually happened in my neighborhood where someone is walking their kid to school and then ICE shows up and takes the parent away and the kid's just kind of there. And then in our case, luckily neighbors stepped in and took care of the kid. I don't know if the government has a plan for what do you do with these kids who were born here, who are American citizens. If you're deporting their parents, are you deporting American citizens? Or are you, I mean, I know that there's this conversation about ending birthright citizenship, which I can't even get into, about how unnerving and scary that is. That stuff is really, it's scary, but it's devastatingly sad because you're talking about these small children or teenagers, these children who don't understand, depth of what's happening. And then you have this real anger at the outright racism that's happening. Like, did you hear about, this is a really fun way that we can fight back, but these are putting Mexican flags on their like pickup trucks.
I saw that.
And they're getting pulled over by ICE, and ICE is like, why are you putting Mexican flag on your pickup truck? Then you're going to keep getting pulled over. It's causing problems. And they're like, oh no, I just got my pickup like that. And they're doing it like, as a way to protest, but it's also like, why are you pulling over random people because they have a Mexican flag? You're literally just doing it based on race. You're just pulling over brown people.
It's so interesting too, like as you were saying. So I was going on the ICE website because I'm curious, and like the whole front homepage of the ICE website is like, here are all these criminals we've arrested, and it's just like in different places, like we've arrested this criminal, but you can actually locate people online on their locator system, but you can't locate kids, right? Anybody under the age of 18 because of like kid privacy laws. But it does make me wonder like how many kids are being disappeared in this system because we have no way to track them either, right?
And that was an issue with the first time Trump was president, where kids were getting pushed into the foster system and there was really no way to connect them back to their family because they did such a poor job at tracking kids. And then it's like, we don't know what happened to those kids. Not that I haven't seen anything about what happened to those kids. Are they just like still lingering out there? Did they get adopted to like nice white Christian families? Because that sounds like repeated history if I've ever heard it.
I know. Another thing that stood out to me, ICE related in the news this summer, was that they were offering like $50,000 signing bonuses for federal employees who wanted to move to ICE. And it's just like, dude, you're defunding schools, you're taking away free breakfast from children, and you're putting that money into racial profiling and getting rid of people who are like just like good regular citizens.
Yeah, because that's the thing is like, the ICE website and everything that the White House is putting out is like, we deported this criminal. This person was, a violent offender. This person was a trafficker. But they're also deporting non-citizens who don't have any criminal history.
Right. It's like, speak out against Palestine, you're gone.
Standing outside of Home Depot.
Yep.
Because you're a day laborer, you're getting deported. Why are you deporting these guys?
Our parents watch a lot of the Spanish news. One of the things that they were saying that Mom was telling me is that a lot of Hispanic-owned businesses are really losing money because so many people are afraid to come out and like support their business because they're afraid that ICE is going to be waiting there. And so all of these small businesses have been like delivering orders because their customers are too scared to come in person, which is so fucked up and harming literally the most marginalized communities.
Yeah, I'm actually on the ICE website now, but what's really interesting is they're only posting Latino men on their website.
Of course they are, because it's telling the story that they want to tell.
So I'm like, so you're not finding any, I don't know, Western Europeans that have been deported? You're not, you know what I mean? Like,
what drives me so crazy about this argument is literally the Epstein files. You're like, okay, let's deport all the criminals. And it's like, sir, how many felonies do you have? And not just Trump, right? Like the whole fucking circle.
Can I just say another thing that really makes me so angry about this is people who, I think I'm about to call out so many of our listeners right now, and that's fine.
Listen, before you go there, a good white person is able to take some criticism.
I think if you are in the bucket that I'm about to call out, please do some honest reflection about why you are being called out. What really, the people that I get the most angry about, it are the people whose parents immigrated here and they were born here. And they have had wonderful opportunities because their parents did the hard work of immigrating here. And now they want to shut the door behind them. And they are supportive of this administration. And they are supportive of what ICE is doing.
To be fair, I don't think those people are listening to this podcast.
I mean,
maybe.
I think that there may be some of our cousins who fall under that bucket who might be listening to that. I think there might be some people who are a little more conservative who might be listening to that. I know there are people who listen to this who know people who fall under this bucket.
One of the things that really shifted for me in terms of empathy, I think there's a lot of internalized shame around being immigrants, and I think that's why people who have immigrant families are then being like, oh, we're not the same as those immigrants, right? Like it's like an actual like strategy. They have so much like internalized hate that they're like basically acting out. Like I've read about this like happening like in the Black community where like people have like all of this internalized racism, and so like they're like acting out against like their own people. And I think that is where a lot of this comes from. And it's like, yes, there's this piece of them that's selling out, right? Because they're like, hey, we're not immigrants anymore. Like when the Irish became white, we're not immigrants anymore. We're just white people. But I think like a lot of that comes from the shame and then the not understanding what you're losing when you jump into that white privilege boat, because what you lose is your culture, is your language, is your family, like the way that things happen. And I think when you jump into like, hey, like I'm a good white person now and I get all of the good American privileges, it's hard to see that in order to get those privileges and in order to fit in this society and in these spaces, you do have to give up a piece of yourself. And that's the exchange that I don't think people realize. And I think that's where this internalized shame comes from.
And
That's a
I
thesis right there.
and I get that. And like, and maybe I'm being too harsh,
No, I don't think you're being harsh. I think you're being
but I
real.
didn't even get to what my statement was going to be before
I'm
you
so
say I'm not
sorry.
being too harsh. Maybe I'm being too harsh, but like, get some fucking therapy.
Yeah.
Like, open a book and do a lot of self-reflection. Start journaling. Because you're a part of this problem. And like, if your parents, if this administration had been in power, let's say 40 years earlier, you would not be here enjoying the privileges of being a white person.
Well, and what's wild is that a lot of what's happening now, I think our parents' childhood informs a lot of their perspectives. And so that's another thing that's interesting too, especially for the Portuguese immigrants who are like, yes, ICE is doing great. Like grandparents grew up under a fascist regime. They grew up under the consequences of the fascist regime. One of the conversations I was having with Dad the other day was about the National Guard being in DC and like how they were basically moving all the unhoused people. And Dad was like, but where are they going to go? And it's like, well, I don't think they care, right? It's like not my problem type of thing. And so he got to talking about how back in the day, nobody wore shoes on the island because they didn't really have shoes. They would just like put them on when it was like a special thing. But you couldn't enter the airport if you had no shoes. It was like a rule because it was an international airport. There were people coming through, like important dignitaries were coming through. And so we were talking about this idea of they just don't want to see the problems that are in front of them. And so they're creating this illusion. That's what the National Guard is doing by like pushing out all of the unhoused people in DC. Like you're taking, if you don't see it, it doesn't exist, right? If it's not in my backyard, I don't actually have to do anything about it. And it's like
Right.
the same kind of idea.
Yeah, completely.
Sorry. One of the arguments against is, but who's going to do the low labor jobs? Because a lot of that does come from immigrants, but I think their idea is to just increase the prison population system because they get free slave labor through the prison population system. I think that's the goal.
Yes. The who's going to replace low skilled labor is other people of color
In
that they're
prison,
going to in prison.
who are in detention centers that are going to become labor camps because prisons are labor camps. If you're
Right.
confused, lots of books on that. Let me know. I will make some recommendations.
We can add them to show notes. One of my sources of news, just to get sort of outside of the echo chamber of US news, I look up BBC News a lot, and I just pulled up this article that is from June of this year. So it's a little outdated. It says that there's an estimated 51,000 people in ICE detention facilities as of the 1st of June of this year. And 44% have no criminal record aside from entering the US without permission. Can you
Which is
imagine that?
crazy. And you know what else? None of their arguments make sense because the other argument is that this will create jobs because you're getting rid of all of the people stealing your jobs. But like jobs are at an all-time low right now. Not all time. I shouldn't make that. Jobs are at a very low right now.
Yeah, I'm really confused by that because also immigrants are lazy criminals. So are they lazy criminals or are they stealing all the jobs? Which one is it?
That's true.
Are they breaking and entering and stealing all my shit and then, like, I don't know, selling them to pawn shops? Or are they stealing my job? Could someone clarify that, please, for me?
Yeah, it's just so wild because I don't know. What was the GOP lawmakers aim? This was the headline that I wrote down. And it was a Fox News headline. GOP lawmakers aim penalties on radical left as ICE attacks rise by over 800. But where's the context here? ICE attacks are rising because why? Because people are standing up to ICE in their communities, because ICE is showing up more, because ICE is trying to kidnap people illegally. Like, what's the story?
Right. Because ICE is, kidnapping people, grocery stores and at work.
It's just so sad to live. That's what I think people don't really realize is there are people in this country who are literally afraid of leaving their house right now. They're afraid of sending their kids to school. They're afraid of going to work. They're afraid of going to the grocery store to buy milk because ICE is hanging out outside of Market Basket. Like, that's fucked up. And like, how are you okay with that?
Can I share a ridiculous conversation I overheard?
Yeah, please.
I went to the RMV to renew my license, and that's DMV for anyone who doesn't live in Massachusetts. And there was like a woman who's probably like in her 30s or 40s stand at the booth next to me, and she was helping her older, either her mother or her aunt, a much older lady who's like sitting in a chair next to her. And that woman was there to renew her license or get a new ID or something like that. So because we now need real IDs, there's a lot more information you need to bring with you. And this woman, the older woman, is in her 80s, and I guess she didn't have all of the information that she needed. I don't know exactly what the issue was. When it was my turn, like this problem had already been happening. So I overheard the woman asking the RMV worker, how can I get her naturalization paperwork if she was born in this country? And they were like, if she doesn't have naturalization paperwork, I can't get her an ID. And the woman was like, she doesn't have naturalization paperwork because she is a citizen. She was born here.
Oh my God.
And then the person helping her was like, right, but I need her naturalization paperwork to prove she's a citizen. And the woman was like, I need to just speak to a supervisor because I don't think you're understanding. She is a citizen. And the issue was that this woman didn't speak English very well.
Right.
I think there was some level of dementia, maybe. And then I heard her on the phone while they were waiting for the supervisor. This woman called her aunt, and she was explaining that she was like, do you know where like her birth certificate is or anything like that? Because like she doesn't know where her birth certificate is. But like they're asking for naturalization paperwork, but it's like she was born here. I don't know where like what hospital she was born in. No, she's like, we need to get her a birth certificate because they're asking for naturalization. And then like the old woman was like, are they going to send me back? And then she like paused and she was like, but back to where? I do think there was like a level of dementia where it's like if she doesn't know, she can't explain like what state she was born in. The woman said something about like, she's in her 80s. I can't expect her to like put all this stuff together by herself. But I was like, what the hell is going on where we're asking for naturalization paperwork from someone who is a U.S. citizen born here? And it was probably someone like in our situation where they're first gen.
Right. It's scary thinking back to World War II when Jewish people had to wear identification on their bodies to show that they were Jewish. We're not that far from that. ICE randomly stopping you on the street to see if you're a citizen, ICE randomly pulling you over. We're not that far from like...
I would have no way, if I got pulled over today and asked to prove that I'm a citizen, I would have no way to prove that on a random traffic stop.
Yeah, I don't carry my passport around.
Right.
So maybe I should.
And it's like, we don't know that hasn't happened, where they've detained someone who... No, we do know. We do know. They have detained people who are American citizens.
Right. They don't care.
Yeah, it's just like you don't look the way I want an American to look, so I'm going to detain you. You don't have the right to you don't have the right to call your family. This is a very different vibe than the first season.
Things are getting darker fast.
I don't like this timeline.
I don't like this timeline either. It's pretty wild. I feel like we're like, I don't know where I'm going with this. It's fucked up.
Yeah. I was actually just going to pull up the Times to see if there's anything interesting in the headlines today.
Today is it's the 475 people arrested at the Georgia Hyundai plant is the big news of the day. See that on September 5th, the day we're recording this.
There's just so much going on with it. Also is the day the job market came out, so that actually is higher up in the news than the ICE raid.
Well, what's going on with the job market, Leslie?
Labor market stalled this summer. So only
Even with all the new
22,000
jobs from immigrants leaving?
all the new jobs from immigrants leaving has not helped. Only 22,000 jobs added in August.
Whoa, that's bad,
Oh my
right?
gosh. June was actually negative. It was revised. It says June was revised to be a negative jobs added. So jobs were taken away. That's crazy.
We were talking about it before we started recording. How many people do you know that have been laid off and unemployed right now because there are literally no jobs?
I know so many people who got laid off in this year that it's insane, and it's incredibly frightening. And I don't know what we're gonna do.
Me and my husband were joking yesterday because we're like, okay, so if you look at, the 1920s, it really started with the pandemic and then it went into the Great Depression. And we're like, damn, did Y2K really happen? And we're just like on a loop and reliving the last century again. Like,
Maybe.
and like, it's just going downhill from here. Like, we'll have some good years maybe in like the 80s and 90s later, but like, we're just going down to shit for the next like 30, 40 years.
God, I don't know. Like, didn't the he's like, what didn't like mid-century was pretty good
For the white man, I guess.
I mean, right.
But I mean, times are pretty good right now for the white man, I'd say.
I mean, not the unemployed and poor ones. I guess that's
No.
true.
I guess like when I'm saying that, really what I mean is billionaires.
Yeah. Great time if you're a billionaire.
And I think one of the conversations that happens is I think people who are millionaires feel attacked, but it's like, you can have a few $1 million. That's cool. I would even say like up to $1 billion. Cool. But it's really like that discrepancy between like the billionaires and like people who are trying to find jobs and can't find a job. Like that's where the real problem is.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is. I don't know, man. I don't see it getting any better anytime soon.
And those billionaires who are like advocating for shit like getting rid of vaccines. Not going to Florida anytime soon.
Same, but the really crazy thing about that is that it can actually start something really big.
I literally feel like we should ban Floridians from coming into this state unless they have vaccine records. I do know I'm being a little bit extreme with that, but I do think that Americans are going to have to start showing vaccine records to get into other countries.
There actually has been conversation about that.
Yeah.
Citizens of other countries have been asking their politicians, can we have Americans show that they've been vaccinated before they arrive? They come here.
It's just wild. This is what makes me so angry is that immigrants and people of color and all of these underrepresented groups are being scapegoated as the problem when really it's like we can't even get COVID vaccines this fall, potentially. And it's like that's what's really causing the harm. We have measles again. Measles had been eradicated since 1995. And it's back because people are deciding not to vaccinate their children. And this is the problem with the bubble of social media and the bubble of news where if you're not looking at other news, you're only hearing the same things over and over again. And if you're like, this is my other thing. We need to rebrand vaccines, microdosing, mRNA. I feel like I could sell it to RFK.
I had a family member send me an Instagram video. It was like a parent, like a mom. It was a white woman who was on a podium just speaking out against all of the chemicals in vaccines and how when she was younger, it was only this many vaccines, but now her kids need to have so many more vaccines and all the chemicals in them and like the expectations. And the family member was like, is this true? Do they need to have this many vaccines? And I was like, yes, because fucking science, you fucking dimwit.
And also, there are no chemicals in vaccines. Vaccines are literally, depending on the vaccine, just ground up bits of vaccine so that you get it in a small dose so your body understands what to do. It builds antigens, it gets antibodies. So the next time you're exposed to it, your body knows what to do because it's seen it before. That's the idea behind vaccines.
Oh my God. If I can find it, I'll put it in the show notes, but there's a really funny Reddit post where someone's like, how about instead of giving people vaccines, we just expose them to the illness like they used to do with the chicken pox?
That's literally what vaccines are.
The comments were like, dude, you really need to go look up what vaccines.
My God.
That was like literally how I looked it up. And I was like, I have no hope for a future. But anyway, I do. The person who sent me that, despite I just call them a dimwit, is quite a lovely person. But I just had this. I didn't even respond to it because there was no polite way to respond to it. But I was like, yeah, because as we learn things, we create ways to make our kids not fucking suffer.
Yep.
So, like, yeah. Also, like, we didn't have COVID when we were little. We do now. So, yeah, now we're adding another vaccine to the repertoire. So now it's like, we're not just getting our annual flu vaccine, we're getting our annual flu and COVID vaccines. Do you not understand? This is all someone who, like, refused to get the COVID vaccine, so.
And I know a lot of people didn't come to my wedding because I asked people to be vaccinated, and it caused some rifts in some relationships.
Yeah. Same. And it was like my baby shower. And I was like, you can't be around me if you haven't been vaccinated. You cannot meet my child if you haven't been vaccinated. Because like I had a COVID baby, and it was like right when the vaccines came out. So it was like, when you get vaccinated, you are welcome to come meet the child. And people were really upset about it. And some people didn't meet her until she was fully vaccinated.
It's so interesting, especially in Massachusetts. I feel like most people were vaccinated. I know you could always get a religious exemption if you didn't want to be.
Honestly should never be allowed.
But I think one of the arguments that people are making in Florida are, well, now it's not mandatory. Now people can choose. And it's like, but before it wasn't mandatory, you still had a choice. You could get exemptions. What's happening now in Florida is because it's not mandatory, programs that fund mandatory vaccines are no longer being funded. So kids that normally wouldn't have access to these vaccines, who potentially want the vaccines, no longer have access to them. So again, it's one of these policies that's hurting your most marginalized people who probably still do want the vaccines. And these privileged ass people trying to make these policies, many of who I bet are vaccinated or at least have very good health coverage. So if they get sick, it doesn't matter that much because they have doctors.
I would also like to point out that Florida allows you to choose whether you and your children are vaccinated. But Florida does not allow you to choose whether or not you carry a fetus.
Of course, because, only the choices that, I feel like you started on a rant and now I'm ending angry.
I know, and I like
what happened?
I feel like people are going to listen. I feel like if this is the only episode of Unapologetically First Gen that someone listens to, they're going to be like, wow, these girls are angry. And it's like, not always, guys. We're not always angry. These are touchy subjects. The important thing here is we are talking about, we come from an immigrant family. We talk a lot about growing up in a very insular community. That's our life. So we are allowed to be angry about what's going on with the immigrant situation. But also, you don't have to be part of the immigrant community to be angry about the immigrant situation. You can just be angry about the immigrant situation and get a Mexican flag sticker to put on your pickup. I encourage everybody to do that.
I honestly might. I've never had a bumper sticker before, but maybe I'll just go out and get all of the Caribbean, South American countries. I'll be Brazil, Mexico, Cuba, Haiti.
Get a Haitian one. Yeah.
I'll be like, we're multicultural in this car.
We are a multicultural family in this car. I am not going to do that because my husband's Black and I am scared that he will get deported.
Fair enough. Also, you have young children. They're going to be traumatized. Like, why are we always getting pulled over?
Why are we getting pulled over by men in masks? So I will not be doing that, but I encourage others who can safely do it to do that. We talked about vaccines and stuff, and it's fair to be angry about that stuff when you listen to doctors and scientists and you are scared for the general population. You and I have a lot of empathy for people.
We do.
And so that means that sometimes when you see that that there's large groups of people making decisions that can affect large groups of people, that empathy goes from like, oh, I feel really bad for this person or this group of people, ends up getting pushed into, I'm really angry that those people are so stupid.
Well, it's because a lot of the people in power don't have any social emotional intelligence, and so empathy is not really a part of what they do because it is a skill and it is a way of being smart.
Yeah, and it just feels like it's one of those things. Do you have to have close to zero empathy to be that powerful?
I mean, they have studies on that where like a higher amount of CEOs are psychopaths than in the general population
I
because
also read the psychopath test.
right, it's like that you have to like not care about other people because and this is true. Like you don't become a multi hundreds of millions of dollars millionaire or billionaire without taking advantage of other people. It's impossible. You have to steal people's labor.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pay low wages. You have to take advantage of people in order to get to the top. And it's just what it is, right? My business is never going to be a VC funded capitalist venture because like it doesn't agree with my values.
Right down.
Yeah. All right. With that, thank you so much for listening to Unapologetically First Gen with Lesley and Stacy. This podcast is brought to you by our businesses, Azora Ops and Stacy Braga Copy Studios. So if you have a business, please hire us so we can continue bringing you this podcast on our free time. And also like, subscribe, and share the podcast if you enjoyed it. And thank you so much for listening. Until next time.